Hey guys, Morktorkus here. So in this video, we're going to be looking at Leona and the Daybreak cards that are coming to Targon in this upcoming Call of the Mountain expansion. I'm going to give you my impressions, and we're going to go into it, so let's hop right in. And before we do look at the cards, if you're not aware of what Daybreak does, it is an effect that triggers if this is the first card that you've played this turn. So first off, looking at Leona, she's a 4-mana 3/5 with Daybreak stun the strongest enemy, and she levels up after you've activated Daybreak 4+ times. Then after that, now beyond the Daybreak, she now also stuns every time another Daybreak is triggered. So the 4-mana 3/5 body is a very strong one. Having the stats on the health side is very good for trades and things like that, especially combined with the fact that you are stunning the strongest enemy means that you are likely to be fighting smaller ones, and that means you're going to be making a lot more trades because of the fact that you do have this extra health, so you can take out a lot more smaller units. They're not really going to want to block it, but they might have to, or else this damage just go through to their nexus. And definitely after she levels up, when you're triggering Daybreaks over and over, stunning an enemy every turn and potentially multiple times a turn, combined with one of the cards we're going to be seeing in a bit here, it means that you're really going to be able to put a lot of pressure on and potentially just lock down some of their bigger stuff, a lot like the way that Swain does with Leviathan and his interaction with that, though this is a lot easier and cheaper to trigger, but at the same time it's not just infinitely happening every turn to 3 different enemies without any other prerequisites. So like, it's definitely a different situation. But I think generally speaking, we're gonna see that Leona is just very strong as a base unit, and combined with a bunch of Daybreak cards with her leveled up version, you could really have an impact on the game and push out your opponent. So I think even if you don't end up making a full Daybreak deck, if you just run a small package of Daybreak cards just to make sure that Leona has that synergy, I think that would work really well too. And I think she's very strong. I think she looks like a very good unit. I think she's going to have a huge impact on the meta. Then we have Morning Light, which is a 5-mana slow spell, and it's also Leona's champion spell. Give allies +2/+2 this round, and Daybreak activate all Daybreak effects at once. So every ally on your board that has Daybreak will trigger their Daybreak when you play this, if you Daybreak it. Obviously, this is a thing you do right at the start of your turn if you're doing the Daybreak, so that means that you have to have built up your board last turn, and then you're triggering the Daybreak the next turn. So this is probably a situation where your opponent passed over back to you after you spent their turn developing, and then at the start of your turn, you are setting up a really big, impactful board, because a few of these Daybreak effects are stat-based, so you are increasing their stats beyond the fact that you're already giving them +2/+2. And the really big synergy here is that if you do trigger multiple Daybreaks with this effect, then Leona is also stunning multiple units with this effect. So this is often going to be like a finisher type of deal. I think in a Daybreak deck, you would have a hard time not running this. Like, it's a little bit slow, obviously, it's a slow spell. And you might be a little bit de-incentivized to want to play it at the start of your turn when you are in this open attack situation because of cards like Ruination and stuff like that. But there aren't a ton of slow speed board clears out there. And there are not a ton of board clears out there in general. And I think in most cases, you're going to be pretty happy setting up a much larger board with this, as long as you don't necessarily expect that they're going to like build a big board to like mess you up with it. I have played with a few of the slow speed buff cards lately, and I haven't been too disappointed with them. This one's a little weaker than some of those other ones as a finisher, but combining it with Leona is definitely going to be really good. If you don't have Leona, you might feel a little more iffy about it. And I mean, this is +2/+2 versus 6 mana for +3/+3 in Demacia with their card. But I think the Daybreak effect is certainly going to make you have those like really big turns when you do have Leona around. So it's kind of like not necessarily always going to have the stats be worth it, but I think in a lot of cases you will be able to get that decent lead going on, and this is definitely going to make sure that you finish the game, because some of these, they don't really have like necessarily win condition type effects. Like you don't have a ton of like overwhelm and thing like that. So while you might not run a ton of these, I think running one or maybe two of these in your deck, if you're running Daybreak as your like a main thing and Leona is like your main champion, I think it'll make sense. I think it'll be a good inclusion. And we have Zenith Blade, 3 mana slow spell, grant an ally +1/+2 and overwhelm, and Daybreak draw a Zenith Blade. So it's kind of going to replace itself out of your deck. It's going to thin your deck a bit, and it's going to make sure that you still have one around if you still have copies of it in your deck and you Daybreak it. It is granting it, so these stats are permanent, and the overwhelm keyword is also going to be permanent. This could be very good on some units, though saving it till later is probably not going to be what you really want to be doing. And the fact that it's slow speed is pretty rough. You can definitely have your minion destroyed before it gets to trigger, and then none of it really gets to happen. I'm imagining the Daybreak effect would not trigger if your ally was killed, though I may be wrong there. I guess maybe it would. I have seen other cards work that way before. Also, Daybreaking this is pretty awkward because you're playing a slow speed buff on a minion at the start of your turn, which means you have to already have something worth giving these stats and the keyword to on your board from last turn. And you're normally going to want to do that on an attack turn, and then you're letting your opponent do stuff before you on your open attack possibility. So like that all sounds really rough, but the fact that you are getting more Daybreak cards off of one Daybreak card, it's hard to say whether it's really worth it. I think it'll be okay. The thing is definitely that you need to run 3 if you're running 1. So that's 3 deck slots that you have to commit to it. So if you want to not have 3, you're going to have to cut all of them. It might end up being not even that much there because of Daybreak as much as we want Overwhelm in a certain deck with certain cards, and it just makes sense in that deck, and you just need to make that work some way, so you just put in that kind of a deck. Like maybe you want this with Lee Sin or Vi, because those are the best units out there for having Overwhelm generally. So maybe that goes in that deck, and it just doesn't fit into a like full-on Daybreak deck, and that's not really the point of it. So we'll see. It's not the strongest Daybreak card, that's for sure, but it might find a way to make it into a deck or two. Then we have Sunburst, 6 mana slow spell, deal 6 to a unit, and Daybreak instead silence it this round and deal 6 to it. So you're dealing 6 for 6 in Legends of Runeterra. That's a pretty decent thing to be doing at slow speed. It's just that, like, you know, with the Daybreak you get the silence effect. I don't think that's super relevant in almost any cases. It's basically just for, I guess you could reduce their stats if they're got permanent buffs on them or something, or potentially you are just getting rid of a last breath. Like I saw in the reveal video when they did use it, they used it on a Ledros. You're not going to run into a ton of Ledroses, and having this around stuck in your hand until you play it on a Ledros isn't going to be super exciting either. So I think the Daybreak effect is largely irrelevant, and you can mostly just think about it in the 6 for 6 idea. The Daybreak just might be an upside from here or there. And in that case, it's kind of iffy. It might fit into slower Targon decks just because they might not have better options, and you're going to potentially want to do that in a deck that you don't already have better options in the other region that you're running. So maybe this is just what you have to go for. I mean, obviously, compared to Thermo Beam, this looks really rough because with Thermo Beam, you have the flexibility and stuff. Well, sometimes you kind of limiting you in that you have to spend more sometimes because you need to play it then. And I mean, it's normally an upside when you're playing Thermo Beam. This is normally going to be worse than that. But yeah, I mean, we haven't seen really any real removal in Targon. This is the first one we've seen. So it might be necessary if you really have to have some sort of big, large unit removal out there for the deck that you're running, and you're not forced to go into a different region that does have that kind of tools. So it's good in that way, but definitely underwhelming in most other ways that I'm looking at it. I think it's another Daybreak card that probably doesn't make it into the Daybreak deck, and will more likely see itself in a different deck. Then we have Guiding Touch, which is a 2-mana burst spell. Heal an ally or your Nexus 2 and draw 1 card. This card looks freaking great. Heal 2, draw 1. You're cycling and you're almost having as much as a healing potion. That seems amazing to me. I think this is going to make it into a lot of decks, just because having extra draw is great, having a little bit of healing is good. Cycling is always going to be very good for cheap amount of mana. This is even better in Runeterra than other games where you have like a 2-mana draw 1, because of the fact that sometimes you don't have anything else to use your spell mana on. So you're basically just getting a new card, and this healing might be relevant. You could definitely use this in combat too, like the heal might save your unit in combat, and that's really great. So I like it a lot. I think it's going to be a staple for a lot of Targon decks. Maybe not a 3 of, but certainly in some decks it will be. And definitely in decks where you want to be cycling and you want to be casting a bunch of spells and stuff at burst speed, this certainly fills that mold, and I like it a lot for that. And we have our other Daybreak cards. So we have the Solari Soldier, 1 mana, 2/2 with Daybreak, give me +1/+1 this round. So it's better than Cytheria in Demacia. Not necessarily better than Jagged Butcher, because sometimes the Plunder is going to be rather easy for them to trigger. But at least on turn 1, which is probably the most relevant time that you're worrying about your 1-drop, I think this is normally going to be a lot better, because you're not having to pair it with a Warning Shot to make it a 3/3. Obviously it's not permanent, but in terms of Daybreak minions, this one looks really strong. I think this one looks like a great 1-drop. It trades favorably into other 1-drops, like every other 1-drop on the turn that it's played, and then after that it's just the normal premium 1-drop stat line. So I think this looks great in Daybreak decks, and I think it's going to look great in like any Targon deck that really cares about tempo and stuff like that. This definitely looks like one of the strongest cards that we've seen out of Call of the Mountain so far. Then we have Solari Shield Bearer, 2 mana, 3/2 with Daybreak. Give me +0/+4 this round. So that makes her a 2 mana 3/6 if you play her on Daybreak. Obviously, if she doesn't have combat with anything, or the health just isn't relevant that round for any reason, that she's just going to be a 3/2 still. Obviously, the attack isn't changing, so if you did just swing into an attack and wasn't blocked or anything like that, the health wouldn't really matter. But in most cases, I think it will matter. She's comparable to the Demacia card that gives Barrier for 2 mana. It's also a 3/2, though it can't give Barrier to itself, and sometimes health is going to be better than Barrier. Like 4 health versus Barrier, it can be pretty comparable. Obviously, Barrier can block infinite damage in 1 hit, but this could live through more than that. If you, for instance, if they went for a Vile Feast on it, the Barrier would break in the other situation, but in this case, it's only 1 damage, and then you still have 3 more health than you started with. So in that case, this would be a lot stronger, and definitely the fact that it doesn't require you to have anything else stick on the board to get value out of it, I think it seems very good. It's another really good Daybreak card. I think this and the Solari Soldier are going to fit into a lot of decks, even if you don't run Daybreak. This is probably going to be one of your top tempo cards that you want on turn 2. And I think it looks really, really strong. Then we have Sun Guardian, 6 mana, 4/3 with Overwhelm and Daybreak. Give me +4/+4 this round. So without the Daybreak, it's obviously terrible. So you definitely need to play it with the Daybreak. And the stats are only for that round, so they do fall off. But it is a little bigger than the Overwhelm 6-drop in Freljord, which is a 7/6. This would be an 8/7. And I mean, it's normally only going to really matter on the first turn, though that's not necessarily the case, and especially if you did want to set it up before your attack, then you are giving your opponent time, whereas with, I think it's the Wild Claw, it's called, you could play it the turn before, and then when the turn passes over, you just go straight for the attack. This is certainly not possible in this case. It has to be played when you are attacking. So I think there's a lot of things going against this card. I don't think this is going to fit into any Daybreak decks, or any decks at all, really. The extra little bit of stats over the competition of other 6 mana Overwhelm minions really doesn't feel worth it. So I think this one's just going to end up left in obscurity, unfortunately. And the last card we have is a Ravun, a Daylight's Spear. I'm going to assume that it's pronounced that way because that sounds cool. And it's a 5 mana 5/5 with Daybreak. Create a random Daybreak card in hand. And it's also always day for us, which is weird wording because Riot loves to make their wording weird. But we can assume that that means every Daybreak card will always have their Daybreak active, even after you've already played a card that turn. So creating a random Daybreak card in hand on a 5 mana 5/5, really good. You're getting some extra value on just a solid body, but that secondary effect is so relevant, and even if he does just die and you got your random Daybreak card, then that's totally fine. But if he sticks around, that Daybreak effect always being active makes Leona way stronger if Leona's there. And just the way you make your turns go off, like if you're running a lot of Daybreak cards, which you're going to be running quite a few, then having this effect is going to make them have so much more value because you don't have to wait around to play them, or you don't have to play them for less than their full effect. So I think if you are running a full Daybreak deck, you're going to want this to be in there for sure. And even if you don't have any other Daybreak cards, this one will give you one. So if you've played them all out already, now you have another one, and it will definitely get the upside of being paired with him. So I think this guy looks super exciting for the Daylight archetype, and I'm really excited to try him out along with the rest of the Daybreak cards. And that's going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it a lot. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Comment down below what you think of Leona and the Daybreak package for Targon. And please subscribe if you'd like to see more of my content in the future. Again, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it so much, and I'll see you guys in the next one.